After seeing some great waterfalls in the New York Finger Lakes area, Sue, Cassie, and I headed south into the mountains of Pennsylvania to visit Ricketts Glen State Park. We drove New York 14 out of Watkins Glen, jumping on Interstate 86, taking us to the New York-Pennsylvania border, where we took US 220. From Elmira, New York to Towanda, Pennsylvania, we followed along the Chemung River, then the Susquehanna River for almost 40 miles. It was a beautiful drive following the rivers. We then drove through the cool little town of Dashore, where we joined Pennsylvania 487, taking us into Ricketts Glen. We arrived mid-afternoon. Ricketts Glen State Park is one of the most scenic areas in Pennsylvania, including 13,000 acres across 3 counties. Ricketts Glen is a national natural landmark known for its old-growth forest and waterfalls. This area was approved as a national park site in the 1930s, but World War II brought an end to this plan for development. In 1942, the heirs to Colonel Robert Bruce Ricketts, a Civil War veteran who owned the land, sold the Glen and Falls area to Pennsylvania for a state park. For camping, there's the northernmost campground called the Big Loop Campground, and the southernmost campground called the Small Loop Campground. The Small Loop Campground is pet-friendly and has electric hookups. With Cassie along, we of course stayed in the Small Loop Campground. On our first full day, we hiked the beach trail to the beach and recreation area. I'm sure in the summer the beach would be crowded, but we found it abandoned given this was late September. We did continue our hike on the Falls Trail, but stopped short of the descent down to the waterfalls. We were saving that for the next day. We headed back to the campground and the beauty of Lake Jean. You watching for mommy? Huh? Where's mommy? You watching for her? The next day, we plan to hike and see the waterfalls. There are 22 named waterfalls that are south of the campground. 18 of the waterfalls are in the V-shaped trail shown here. There are 4 more falls south of the V-shaped trail, including the Adams Falls, that is the furthest point south. The easiest way to see the Adams Falls is to drive down to the Evergreen parking lot. If you do want to hike from the Evergreen parking lot to see all 22 waterfalls, the Full Loop Falls trail system is 7.2 miles. You would go up one side of the V-loop, across the Highland Trail, and down the other side. Sue and I decided to only hike the V-loop to see the 18 waterfalls. We left the campground and rode our bikes to the Lake Rose parking lot. We learned from someone we met at Watkins Glen that it was easier to hike down the west side of the loop, also known as Ganoga Glen, and hike up the east side of the loop, also known as Glen Leigh. We then walked across the Highland Trail to get back to the Lake Rose parking lot. This 3.2-mile hike has nearly 1,000 feet in elevation change. The terrain is rocky, has steep uneven steps, and can be slippery. But Sue and I found the scenery and amazing waterfalls were well worth the effort. Sue and I have made it to the bottom of the Ganoga Glen, which is coming down to the left under the bridge. This is our well-deserved lunchtime break from the hike, and we have a great view of the challenge ahead, climbing up Glen Leigh. Up we go! Isn't that the saying? What goes down must go up.
circle.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I might have, huh?
Sue and I are so glad we stopped at Ricketts Glen while we were young enough to complete the hike and see this beautiful land and the waterfalls. The next morning, it was time to head down to see our son in Philadelphia. We took Pennsylvania 29 over to Wilkes-Barre and then drove down the Pennsylvania Turnpike on Interstate 476 to arrive at Kevin's house. We enjoyed our stay with him over the weekend. Then it was time to head west towards our home, but we had one more overnight stay. Through our Harvest Host membership, we stayed at Meepah Ventures, a family-owned alpaca farm located in the foothills of the Allegheny Mountains in Pennsylvania. We parked in a field on a hilltop overlooking the Alleghenies and the Meepah Ventures homestead. We spotted both black bear and deer down in the forested valley. We took a barn tour that included feeding the huacuya alpaca. We enjoyed our up-close and personal interaction with these very curious and serene animals. Willie, a blue-eyed and deaf alpaca, took a liking to us and us to him. Two babies less than 5 months old. The next morning, we left the foothills of the Allegheny Mountains and headed across Pennsylvania and Ohio on I-70, returning home to Columbus. This completed our over 1,100-mile trip to the Finger Lakes area of New York and down into Pennsylvania. We enjoyed this trip in the waterfalls in New York at Letchworth State Park and Watkins Glen State Park. And on our way to our son's house, we discovered the amazing waterfalls of Ricketts Glen State Park in Pennsylvania. We have now completed our travels in 2023 and look forward to sharing more videos of our adventures to come in 2024.